Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul LeClaire, and I'm speaking this morning on behalf of Katie Marin, the wonderful chairman of the library's board, and of all of our trustees and staff. And I'm delighted to welcome you as president of the library to this ribbon cutting on a wonderful, wonderful, sunny, cool day in New York. As we inaugurate the total restoration of one of the most important buildings, not only in New York, but in America, and I think one of the most significant, if not the most significant, restoration of an historic structure in the modern history of our town. We have many distinguished visitors with us this morning, in addition to those from the press. We have City Council Speaker Christine Quinn, Robert Tierney, who is the chair of the City Landmarks Commission, Trustee Robert Lieberman of the New York Public Library's Board of Trustees, who is the chair of our Real Estate Committee and on our Building Committee as well. Peter Davidson, who is Executive Director of the Empire State Development Corporation. City Council member Jimmy Van Bramer, who is the chair of the Council Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations. That's the part I don't understand, but he'll tell you all about it. And we'll be joined as well by City Council member Vincent Gentili, who is the chair of the Council Select Committee on Libraries. This is really an incredibly important and wonderful event for us here at the New York Public Library, because what we're doing is showing off for the first time, in spite of the inclement weather, the totally remarkable restoration job that has been done on the entire exterior envelope of this great, great building. Just to give you a few facts and statistics, this is the conclusion of a three-year, $50 million restoration project that included the restoration of over 7,000 different instances of damage or deterioration in the marble facade of the Great Library building. Over 1,000 cracks were repaired, over 2,000 hand-carved marble patches or Dutchmen were installed, and nearly 900 marble balusters were replaced. In addition, nearly 350 bronze windows were repaired, and all of the statues that are placed on the front facade of the library were restored, recarved, arms and legs and faces were replaced, returning this great, great building back to its original grandeur, and just in time for the celebration of its 100th birthday in May of this year. The building was also completely cleaned using 200 gallons of Vulpex concentrated soap. I don't know who is counting, but in any case, 200 gallons were used. And so it gleams like an alabaster palace, even on a dark and dreary day like this. I've been involved in this project from its get-go, and there are so many people who helped us complete this incredibly important endeavor that I will be forever grateful to all of them, especially to our chairman, who's been the great rainmaker in terms of getting us funding for this, as well as to Mayor Bloomberg, Governor Pataki, Council Speaker Quinn, and all the members of the council and state legislature who've been supportive of us, as well as friends from the private sector. Our intention was to turn the building back to its original grandeur and make it look just the way that it looked when the great architects Carrere and Hastings not only envisioned the building, but concluded its design and concluded its construction. Both of these architects were American-born, but they trained in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts on the left bank of the Seine. And what they produced here in New York for us and for the people of New York, and for the people of all the world, is without question, I think, the most perfect Beaux-Arts building in North America. Now that the facade restoration is complete, we're looking forward to a new exterior lighting program, which is the next step in the restoration, in the repositioning of this building. And that new lighting scheme, which has been approved by the Landmarks Commission, will be ready, we hope, in April. And our intention is to make this building look like one of the great illuminated buildings that you see in Paris that makes such a compellingly important place to be at night. And my aspiration is that when this is all completed, no one will be able to visit New York without coming to see the library, both in the daytime as well as at night, and then as well as to come in and use the collections and the services and the staff here. So among other people, in addition to our chairman, whom I'm more than happy to acknowledge as being incredibly significant in the completion of this project, I'd like also to acknowledge Joanna Petska, who was the Vice President for Library Planning, Capital Planning and Construction here at the New York Public Library, who led this effort with total passion, dedication, and brilliance on a minute-by-minute basis. I'd also like to thank the wonderful architects from WIS Jenny Elsner and Associates, who are represented here this morning, who will be speaking, as well as the contractor, Nicholson and Galloway, for all of that brilliant work. And even though they're not here this morning and are not represented, I'd like to thank as well the many hundreds of women and men who actually did the work, who laid their hands on the stone, who recarved, who repositioned, who restored with exceptional delicacy, who used the advanced kinds of laser techniques on the statues that they used. So the laborers who are here, the artisans, the craftspeople, are the reason that it looks as fantastic as it does, and the reason that we've had such success with this great endeavor. So now let me turn to the architects to talk about the project and show you some images and give you more detail. And then we'll be followed by all the dignitaries who I mentioned earlier this morning, who will be joining me here at the podium to say a few words. And so, where is... Oh, here he is, Tim Allenbrook. Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm going to just take you on a whirlwind tour of what we have accomplished in the last 3 years. And I will cover lots of ground, so don't worry, we can show you more pictures later. You can't go anywhere without a picture of the Carrere and Hastings drafting room where the original building was designed. And this was the Port Morris carving shop. And the marble collecting in what is now Bryant Park behind the library. And just to give you a sample of some of the size, the dimension of the stone that was used, and all of this material hoisted into place with steam derricks, no gas-powered equipment, and the library taking shape in its original. And you notice, and 41st Street looked a little different back then. The first thing we did when we were engaged on the project was to conduct a detailed survey of the building from all kinds of trucks, boom trucks and scaffolds and hanging on ropes. And this is what we found. We found, first of all, the building was filthy, just from years of grit and grime and accumulation in New York City. We found lots of deterioration in the marble, sugaring, gypsum crusts, delicate ornament tended to suffer the most because it was exposed to weather on all sides. Crumbling pieces of stone. The column capitals were netted because they had started to fall apart already. Details like the garland frieze on Bryant Park, when you came close and touched them, this is what would happen. The lion had keystones over every window, were a sorry sight. Pieces breaking off in all cases. The balustrades, when you examine them, many of the balustrades have been replaced with precast concrete in the 80s, and many were simply left and or removed. This is some of the original marble ones. There were these wonderful doorways on the Bryant Park elevation, doorways to nowhere, and there's 7 of them, and that circle area is where there was a balustrade that collapsed in the 60s, so they took all of the rest off for safety. Just the plain old stone, in some cases, had severe problems. The sculptures, the fantastic array of sculptures looked like this, basically. This is the worst case, the ones in the pediments, which are made of the same marble. But other sculptures are made from Georgia marble, from Tennessee marble. There's quite a collection. So I won't bore you with all the numbers, but basically this is the 7,000 conditions that we identified out of 20,000 stone units. Our objectives in repairing the building were to balance these 4 categories: safety, patina, cleanliness, and cost. And this is the great little diagram, and what we're trying to do is hit that sweet spot in the middle. There's a balance between all these different factors. You can't do one without considering the other. So, of course, access for the construction was a major topic. The entire first phase during 2008 was completed behind a completely enclosed scaffolding while the Bryant Park Grill conducted business as usual. There was very little area on the ground. Everything happened up in the air. The scaffold was an enormous challenge in itself. The different repair techniques that we employed were pretty straightforward. In many cases, we cut open all the joints and repointed them, 100,000 linear feet of repointing with the hydraulic lime mortars. I think that's 20 miles of joints or something like that. We cleaned, again, as Bob mentioned, Vulpex, by appointment to Her Majesty, a very high quality soap that we used, and with scrub brushes and hot water and steam. That was the baseline cleaning system. And then we had all sorts of other techniques for particularly tricky areas: misting, long-term misting, poultices, microabrasive cleaning. And we had a series of treatments which included ammonium oxalate, a mild consolidant, and a shelter coat, a lime shelter coat. So the results of the cleaning are very dramatic, obviously. These are some samples from the North Courtyard in particular, which was one of the dirtiest parts of the building. But now we get into the repairs of the stone, which are less obvious in terms of the change, but much more difficult in terms of the work. This is the quarry up in Dorset, Vermont, where the original marble was quarried from and where they still quarry to this day. And we went up there and selected blocks of marble for the library, and they were fabricated into hundreds and thousands of bits and pieces to be patched in. As you can see here, the scroll modillions under the cornice, partially repaired, partially replaced. Some cases little bits, some cases the whole thing. The lion heads, this is how we did the lion heads. This is fantastic. And then they were carved in place. And the finished result before it was all blended in. The column capitals turned out to be the biggest challenge of all, because most of them were on the Fifth Avenue facade, and we hit them all in the last year, this year, or 2010. So they were also carved by hand, many acanthus leaves, and among other details. Every piece that was put back in is doweled in with stainless steel fasteners and finished carved in sight. And this is the finished product. Again, some of these rosettes that you saw earlier on, they were carved on the scaffolds, fit back into the facade, and there you have dozens of carved rosettes in the garland frieze. Simple stonework like this was very scary, and we did a full face replacement on stones like that. There were even minor details with thousands of little mortar patches and lead joint caps and crack fills, and attention to the lettering, of course. And then the balustrades. Here's the old balustrades, and there's our first sample new turned marble balustrade. We put all the balustrades back in marble, and they are fantastic looking. That's my favorite part of the project. Here you can see the doorways to nowhere before on the upper right and after on the lower left. Sculpture conservation, that was a major challenge. This is the south pediment on the Fifth Avenue facade. I showed you this picture before. This went through a series of procedures, including cleaning by laser techniques, Dutchman patches, carved pieces of stone to put in where missing pieces, various mortar patching and consolidation treatments, and the finished product, as you can see when you go outside on a sunnier day. Fantastic change. The attic sculptures, which are Georgia marble, were actually in much better shape, a different crystalline structure, but they needed a series of fills and minor repairs, and they're in tip-top shape now. There's the scaffolding as it's coming down. One very important element, getting control of the birds. As you can see, this is a picture from before, but we were fighting this crowd of birds that assumed that the public library was their home, and they were very frustrated to lose their nesting places. So there are 18,000 square feet of netting installed on this building, which are very difficult to see unless you really look hard for them. But you can see there, the 6 attic sculptures over the main portico are completely behind netting. So we're optimistic that we have won the battle, or won the war, even though there's probably a few more battles to fight. All the bronze doors and windows were restored. The windows were, substantially sound, but they had been, left to patinate or rust over the years. And so every one of the windows that started out looking like this was cleaned back to its bare metal and then repatinated and lacquered. Missing bits and pieces of castings and what have you were repaired. Grills were refinished. They're just a beautiful. And then, of course, the site. We went around and the Milford pink granite balustrades. Some were broken. We replaced them. The drains were clogged. We cleared them out. Steps were displaced. We moved them around and reset them entirely. And this is one of the great flagpole bases, completely refinished. And, in 2008, we took down the scaffold on the Bryant Park side. And in 2010, or actually it was getting closer to 2011, we took down the scaffold on this side. And that's what it looked like this week. We have some beautiful completion shots here just to remind us of what it might look like if the sun was out. And patience and fortitude, I hope, approve. And thank you very much.
Okay, now it's time to hear from some other important people. So, Speaker Chris Quinn, and Bob Tierney, and Peter, and Jimmy. Am I missing anyone? Katie, do you want to join us up here?
Oh, great. That was incredibly impressive. The joint was in way worse shape than I ever knew it was. It's kind of a dump. No, I'm only kidding. But it is very, it's exciting to be here. It's actually more exciting to get to walk or drive up or down Fifth Avenue and actually have the library back and to not have it shrouded by scaffolding and different work that's going on. My only regret about this work coming to an end is I think if it had gone on a little longer, Katie, we might have kept Paul a little longer. So we're in some ways victims of our own success. But I really want to thank everyone who was part of the architecture and work team that made this happen and did the work with such great care. I can only imagine, it was good for the city's economy, so we liked that too. And really want to thank Paul, you and the rest of the staff here at the library, and Katie, you and everyone on the board. When you see this building, it reminds you of great days when people revered books and revered learning and really wanted to make buildings that were going to be temples of learning and places of great worship and attention and care for our great works and our great books. And it's sad to see some of those pictures and see how in the hustle and bustle of New York City life and the craziness of tough budget times, we let amazing institutions slip back and move away from what the founders had envisioned them to be. And in that message is something very, very important about the importance of books and the importance of learning. So it's so exciting to have it back, and very exciting to know that it'll be lit in a way, because I don't like the Europeans to beat us in anything. I don't like Jersey to beat us in anything. I don't like anybody to beat us in anything. So, but this is a great day, and it was a huge undertaking, and I just want to thank everyone who was a part of it. And I always say that Patience and Fortitude are my favorite New Yorkers, but I need to know the names of the little lions, because that poor guy, when he was like getting his nose job, I felt like so bad. We could do, you know, there's like bridoplasty show. We could do like the New York Public Library plasty or something with these pictures, make a reality show of the next time we do a job like this. But thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Speaker Quinn. Totally apt remarks, as always. And Paul Leclerc, Joanna Pesca, who is the unsung hero here. Joanna. And in the Landmarks Commission, and before I came up here this morning, I asked about this project, and since 2007 that we have been collaborating and partnering with Tim and Paul, and I said, who is the unmentioned hero of this? And it's you, Joanna, and I wanted to single you out seriously for what you've done and your leadership on this project throughout. And this is, as the speaker said, a palace of learning, or as she suggested, with books. And I believe this is, to carry the book metaphor a little bit quickly, this is a textbook for preservation. This is just extraordinary what's happened here. The scope and scale, of course, are way beyond the normal application. However, this is something that we point to and as a paragon, and setting the bar where it should be, and having the best in the business, as I've said with Tim Allenbrook. And we point to this as the gold standard, really, for preservation. And I believe this building is treated as it should be. Paul characterized it as the most important of its kind in North America. This building is treated in this instance, you've treated it once again like you do your Gutenberg Bible, or all these real treasures that you have, because this is up there with them, the books and the structure and this great building, this great work of architecture. So on behalf of the Landmarks Commission, we thank you for everything you've done on this, and I'm just so excited to be here. And thank you, Katie, for your leadership as well on it all.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Paul, for that. On behalf of Governor Cuomo and the Empire State Development Corp., it's a real pleasure to be here and to be part of this 100th anniversary kickoff. And a member of our colleagues are here from the Empire State Development, New York State, so we all join in the celebration. So we know this is a great treasure, a treasure for its resources and its collections. It's also an incredible icon for the city. So for those reasons, we are just very pleased that the Empire State Development Corp is able to be very involved, able to contribute funds. And these funds have actually come from the last 3 governors. So it has been quite a long-term and historic commitment. Maybe that's a comment on how long it's taken, but at least it's all there. So the library is a celebrated institution. It's deeply embedded in the history of New York, and it's a great source of pride both to the city, of course, but also to the state of New York as a whole. And that's true both as the library, but formally this is kind of really hallowed ground because this was the site of the old Croton distribution reservoir, which when it was built in the 1840s really revolutionized the city and made the city habitable for the first time for great numbers of people because of the freshwater system. So it really was a technological marvel of the time. It then went out of use, and so it was torn down and made available for this great structure. So today we are commemorating those first 100 years of this great building and reintroducing it to the public once again in all its former glory. And in so doing, we're not only honoring the history of the Schwarzman building, but we're sending a message that New York takes very seriously the preservation and the rehabilitation of its truly important and its cherished landmarks. So it's a very important preservation statement we're making, and we're very happy to have been a part of it. So thank you very much. Congratulations.
Good morning. My name is Jimmy Van Bramer, and I am proud to be the chair of the Cultural Affairs Libraries and International Intergroup Relations Committee, Paul LeClaire. First, I want to thank whoever put this slideshow together. Every single slide was sunny and warm. There were trees and greenery. It was very, very ironic. And am I the only person who, in the first slide of that drafting room, did you see a very young Paul LeClaire in the back there? Young-ish Paul LeClaire. First, I just want to thank, and we should all thank, this city is very fortunate to have Speaker Christine Quinn, who is the unbelievable and unyielding champion of public libraries in this city. And this project and so many projects all over the city would not have happened. I came up 41st Street and saw that view, which is slightly changed from whenever that picture was taken. But even today, I thought, you know, it's just so iconic as you come up these streets and down these streets and you see this building. So New York City would not be the same if this building were not here. It's such a wonderful day that has been restored in the loving and detailed way that it has been. And of course, I want to thank Katie Marin and all of the trustees for their unbelievable commitment to this library and to public libraries in this city and in this country. Thank you very much.
Let me conclude these remarks with two thoughts. First, there has never been a great city in all of history without a great library at its heart. Timbuktu, Beijing, Rome, Athens, Alexandria, New York. There has always been a great library that is an economic and intellectual and cultural engine behind a culture and a society. So we play that role, and we play it in a way that's never been played before in the whole 5,000-year history of libraries. Why? Because anybody from anywhere in the world can come here totally free of charge, use the services, and use the collections. Second thought, actually there'll be three, not two. The second thought is no one should think that libraries are anywhere close to becoming anachronisms. Libraries in New York City are more heavily used now than they ever have been in all of their history. Mr. Carnegie must be really happy in heaven about how many people are coming to use public libraries now. Last year, in the 5 boroughs, there were 40 million visits to public libraries, which is 1.5 to 2 million more than visits to all the culturals and all the sports teams combined. So libraries are vitally important to the welfare of the people of this town. Finally, the last thought, I did ask Tim Allenbrook how we could keep the library clean. And you know what he said? And you and government have to help us on this. He said, don't have any more buses stop in front of the library. Move the bus stops. And you can already see on the 42nd Street side, you can see particulate matter. You don't need a microscope or a magnifying glass. It's starting to set on the building again.
You should send the mayor a letter.
I will. At 10 o'clock. It's really important. So if you could help us on that in any way, keep that in mind. And now, are we doing questions from the press? Is that what's happening? Or are we going to the ribbon cutting? We're going to the ribbon cutting. So if you'll look... Yes.
Having them on the other side of the avenue help or not?
Tim?
The buses are getting cleaner over time.
But how much would you make there on the east side? I mean, eventually they're all going to be cleaner, but that'll take a while. So if they're on the east side, does it help?
It can help, but to help.
But, okay.
I can't quantify.
Okay.
But the next block will be better.
Okay, we will now... we'll ask everyone to join us straight ahead and outside. There'll be people directing you to the ribbon cutting ceremony where we'll officially inaugurate the restoration of the great building at Fifth Avenue. Thank you all very, very much.
1, 2, 3.
Clean cut.